In this episode of the popular show The Big Bang Theory, the character of Howard enters the gang's apartment wearing a bright fluorescent shirt and an eye patch. He tells his friends that he's engaging in a technique known as peacocking, where you wear outlandish clothes in order to stand out when you hit on women at a bar, as well as provide a conversation starter. He tells the group that he wants a wingman to go hit up some clubs and drop a few negs to seduce pretty women, before demonstrating this technique on Penny.
May I say, Penny, not a lot of women could look as hot as you do with such greasy hair.
If you've consumed any pop culture in the last decade, chances are these are terms you've encountered before: peacocking, negging, wingman. But what most people don't realize is that these terms and the ideas that Howard is referring to all come from one book. A book that is credited with bringing the previously niche community of pick-up artists to the entire mainstream world. That book is called The Game, and it's caused more damage to pop culture than anyone could possibly have imagined at the time. It sold over 2 million copies and warped the conversation around dating and male romantic behavior forever. Released in 2005, The Game is written by Neil Strauss and is an autobiographical documentation of Strauss's journey into the world of pickup artists, men who consider themselves experts in the field of seducing women. Over the course of the book, Strauss reveals many of the popular tactics that pickup artists use to trick, manipulate, and deceive women into sleeping with them, as well as how he himself became one of the best pickup artists in the world, apparently. Since its release, ideas from the book such as negging, where you give a woman a backhanded compliment to lower her confidence and self-esteem, thus making her an easier target, have become a part of our culture, and you can see examples of these ideas everywhere.
Chrissy, I love your glasses.
Really?
They totally pull focus up from that whole chin situation you got going on. To Chrissy!
To a lot of people, things like negging and peacocking seem harmless, or so obviously lame that they don't deserve serious attention. But they'd be wrong. So many of our conversations about the role of men in society revolve around men's relationships with women, and in particular, their ability to get or not get female romantic validation. The original incel movement, for example, spawned as a response to pickup artists. And one of the first major incel communities was a website called puahate.com, Pickup Artist Hate. So it's not hard to see then how the popularization of the pickup artist stereotype eventually leads to people like Andrew Tate, who amass a following by telling men that they should degrade and disregard women's opinion in order to attract their attention. A philosophy which has hurt not just the women on the receiving end of it, but also the men, usually impressionable and vulnerable guys who end up getting sent down a dangerous and self-destructive path. So in this video, I want to talk to you about The Game, but also about its cultural impact in popular media. I want to discuss some of the major ideas of the book and explain how they've made their way into our psychology and how they've hurt women and damaged men, as well as how we can debunk and address them. In particular, we'll focus on two shows, The Big Bang Theory and How I Met Your Mother, which have been the most popular sitcoms in the post-Friends world. Both have characters in the show directly inspired by the game and pickup artist culture, and both feature, amongst other things, plenty of negs. So buckle up for a fascinating ride that would have been a better video if someone more handsome had made it. To understand the impact of the game and how popular media has incorporated it, we first have to understand the book itself. Released in 2005, The Game tells the story of its author, Neil Strauss, who starts the book as a self-professed loser. He claims that he's never had any luck with women, and while he's ashamed of it, he's incredibly curious about the world of pickup artists and whether they could actually help him get laid. So despite his embarrassment in doing it, he signs up for a seminar from a guy named Mystery. Mystery is the world's greatest pickup artist, according to himself. And he runs workshops where, for $500 each in 2005 money, he teaches guys how to seduce women. Strauss and the two other guys who signed up for the workshop arrive in a hotel lobby in LA to meet Mystery and his right-hand man, Sin. Now, if you're wondering why they have names like Mystery and Sin, it's because one of the rules of pickup artists is that they don't believe in using their real names. Partly, it separates their real identity from the fake cool guy persona they want to project, and on the forum boards they all use to share tactics and brag about their conquests, it lets them remain anonymous. The other part is that it helps them have a more interesting name and conversation starter when they approach women. But not all the pickup artist names are cool. Because there's some guys with ridiculous names like Grimble, Two-Timer, and Extra Mask, who is one of the other students that night. And no, they don't explain how you're supposed to get away with approaching a girl by saying, "Hello, my name is Two-Timer, and this is my friend Grimble." Not long into the book, Strauss is encouraged to ditch his real name and rebrand himself as Style, because he's considered by Mystery to be fairly stylish. Although, it should be noted that Mystery likes to wear fuzzy top hats and dress like a homoerotic pirate, so we might need to take this categorization with a pinch of salt. We'll interchangeably use both the names Neil Strauss and Style from here on out to talk about the author. As the workshop begins, Mystery tells his students about his various theories on picking up women, most of which are now well known to us courtesy of this book. Negging, the peacock theory, even the term wingman, or simply wing as they refer to it in the PUA community, are all Mystery's coinage, though he obviously acknowledges he took that last one from Top Gun. After explaining these, Mystery also gives his students some openers that they can use to begin the conversation with the women they're going to hit on. For Style, he recommends approaching a mixed gender group and saying, "Hey, it looks like the party's over here." Then turning to the girl he likes and adding, "If I wasn't gay, you'd so be mine." And no, this is dead ass. When Style questions this idea, Mystery tells him, "Once she's attracted to you, it won't matter whether you said you were gay or not." So, to summarize, Step 1, tell her you're gay. Step 2, Step 3, have sex with her. Armed with this elite knowledge, Mystery takes his students to a nightclub and has them hit on various targets. They do this for 3 nights, and on the last night, Style, and make sure you're sat down for this shocking revelation, tries the "I'm gay" opener on a girl and fails to get anywhere. But he does impress Mystery and Sin with his attitude and with how fast he seems to be picking things up. No pun intended. They tell him, "You're one of us," and that you're gonna be a superstar. Now I should say at this point that the game is a needlessly long book, nearly 500 pages, and is painfully repetitive. So I'm gonna skip large sections of it, and we're gonna frequently take breaks from talking about it to discuss its impact on popular culture and films and TV in particular. So for now, all you need to know is that everyone involved thought that the workshop was a big success, Style becomes friends with Mystery, and the two begin to hang out. Mystery, meanwhile, gets on the Pickup Artist forum board to start bragging about how successful the workshop was, how he was going to host more, and to provide some tips to all readers about how to approach women. As part of those tips, he shares a diagram with some body part specific negs, which is thankfully included in the book, so you too can use them to degrade women. Some of these seem to posit that women will be devastated if they realize other women wear the same clothes they do, like, "I like that skirt, I just saw a girl wearing it a few minutes ago." There's some that are just weird, like, "You have beautiful eyes, can I touch them?" Or inane ones like, "Those shoes look really comfortable." And then some are just insults straight to your face, like, "Is that a wig? Oh well, it looks nice anyway." And "You kinda have man hands." Again, no explanation of how you're supposed to not get slapped in the face after saying this. Now at this point, I've been making a lot of fun of what's been described in this book, but that's mostly because if you don't laugh, you cry. In truth, what's being described here is no laughing matter. Whenever we see things like negging depicted in media, it's also often presented as absurd or obviously stupid.
You can't let a girl feel good about herself. It will backfire on you. Every compliment has to be backhanded. "Oh, I like your dress, but I'd like it more if you had prettier hair."
That's psychotic. Do guys actually do that?
The grim reality, though, is that most of us know about negging precisely because it is a strategy men use in real life. They do so very unironically in the game, and pretending that this kind of behavior is harmless is damaging, particularly to women. In sitcoms, backhanded insults and attempts to lower a woman's self-esteem, all in the pursuit of picking her up, are often a joke that cues the laugh track.
What are the 3 beginner techniques for picking up a woman at a bar?
Isolate her from her friends, repeat her name in conversation, subtly put her down.
Excellent.
But this only happens when it's women on the receiving end of it. The minute a male character experiences something even remotely similar, the show's lens will instantly recognize how horrible it is to be on the receiving end. In Season 2, Episode 12 of The Big Bang Theory, Penny enters Leonard's apartment and is met by Howard hitting on her, as is his usual MO up to this point in the show. He invites her to a dance where he says she will be the only doable girl at the party, to which she replies,
You're a pig, Howard.
How is doable anything but a compliment?
When Leonard tries to interrupt the conversation, Howard says that there's no problem here and that he and Penny are simply doing the flirtatious tango they always do, an idea which Penny expressly categorizes as repugnant. Before we go further, it's worth pausing really quickly to note that this is not the only time Howard in particular behaves in an inappropriate way towards Penny. His constant attempts to hit on her, despite her obvious and vocal disinterest, is something of a running joke in the show.
See a penny, pick her up, and all the day you'll have good luck.
No, you won't.
Would you have opened the door if you knew it was me?
Not since I found out the teddy bear you gave me had a webcam in it.
So returning to our example, Penny's anger understandably boils over this time, and she tells Howard, "I know you think you're some sort of smooth-talking ladies' man, but the truth is that you're just pathetic and creepy." Howard, still not getting it, continues to push the issue and asks if Penny is flirting with him right now, causing her to finally snap.
Flirting? You think I'm flirting with you? I am not flirting with you! No woman is ever gonna flirt with you! You're just gonna grow old and die alone!
Now at this point, the room goes silent. Howard walks out the apartment, saying he's going home to live his creepy, pathetic life, which causes the audience to go, "Aww." Excuse me? Remember that at the start of this video, I played you an example of Howard negging Penny, which canonically comes 4 episodes before this one. This is in between Howard's other continued attempts to harass and creep on Penny. When those occur, we're met with a laugh track to tell us, the viewer, that it's all harmless, that it doesn't mean anything, that it's normal. And yet, the one time Penny turns around and correctly identifies Howard as being creepy and pathetic, the show suddenly changes tone and tries to make us feel bad for Howard. In fact, it doesn't end there. Later on in this episode, Leonard goes to Penny and tells her that she has to apologize to Howard. Turns out that since hearing Penny's words, Howard has been holed up in his house and not showing up for work or to hang out with the guys. After trying to guilt her doesn't work, Leonard simply tells Penny that she owes him from before, and so she has to do this for them to be even. Begrudgingly, Penny then shows up at his house and has to apologize to Howard. And when even that doesn't prove good enough to lift his spirits, she has to sit and listen to his life story about all his failed romantic encounters. After telling him that when he's just being genuine, he's actually a pretty nice guy, Howard responds by trying to kiss Penny. The next we see them, Howard is visibly beaten up, and the two pretend like he got his injuries from falling in the bathtub. So to summarize, when Penny is insulted, she's expected to go along with the joke. If her feelings are hurt, that's her problem, and she's supposed to just accept this as normal. When Howard is insulted, everybody stops and has to mollycoddle his feelings because all of a sudden, now we recognize the damage that words can do. At this point, you might think that this is just bad work on the part of the Big Bang Theory, but this is something that also happens in the game. At one point in the book, Strauss shares that before joining the pickup artist community, the only time he'd made out with a girl at a club was when he first moved to LA. Here's what he writes. In the middle of kissing, she pulled away and said, "Everyone must think you're a producer or something." The subtext was that she was otherwise too hot to be making out with a slob like me. It shattered me for months. I was too insecure to handle what was, in retrospect, her own form of neg. So Strauss here describes how being negged by this random woman he was making out with shattered him for months. This is a pretty classic part of reading the game because you wonder at this point if he might develop some self-awareness, only to be thoroughly and repeatedly disappointed. Surely, if being negged made him feel this bad, he would never do that to another person, right? But no, literally 1 page later, he moves on to describing another night at a club in LA trying to pick up girls with mystery, and how he approaches and negs a couple women. He writes, "Now that I was in range, it was time to neg," and then tells a girl that another girl at the club is dressed like her, returning to that same tactic that Mystery advocated at the beginning of the book of how telling women that they're wearing a similar outfit to someone else will utterly devastate them. Now this is literally 1 page after the other extract. I'm not exaggerating. Here, I took this picture to show you. This part here is where he's talking about how being negged once made him spiral for 2 months. And then here is where he just casually goes, "So anyways, I went to a club and negged a girl. It was great." So this is a theme that we see not just in the game, not just in Big Bang Theory, but in our wider culture, which is why it's so important to flag it up. when men are spoken to or treated in a mean or derogatory way, we're expected to feel bad for them. Which is correct, actually. I want to be clear that no one should be treated this way, and we should all be able to say, that's not right. But somehow, if it's men who are the ones insulting or being derogatory towards women, then it becomes somehow okay. Women are expected to put up with it because it's just part of the seduction game. Or even worse, as we saw in The Big Bang Theory, we're told that these are nice guys deep down, that they could be doing much worse. And that's where we need to address the next harmful thing that crops up in the game and popular culture: the false choice of nice guy versus asshole. Another really harmful idea that wasn't invented by the game, but is definitely prominently pushed by the book, is this opposition between nice guys and jock bullies. At one point early on in the book, Strauss is reflecting on the fact that he's gotten good at approaching women, but he still can't work up the courage to kiss them. He puts this down to the fact that, quote, there was still a nice guy lurking in my head that I had to get rid of. The pickup artists even have a term for this, AFC. It stands for Average Frustrated Chump. They actually have a bunch of these ridiculous terms that seem to disconnect them from reality, and there's a whole glossary in the back to explain them. There's LMR, Last Minute Resistance, very dark, I know. There's AMOG, which stands for Alpha Male of the Group, and the AFC, the Average Frustrated Chump, is described as a stereotypical nice guy who has no pickup skills or understanding of what attracts women, a man who tends to engage in supplicative and wimpy patterns of behavior around women he has not yet slept with. Even from these, you can see how the game tries to create this divide, not just between men and women, but between types of men. You have your AFCs, nice guys, and you have AMOGs, alpha jocks who serve as obstacles that the nice guys have to overcome to get the girl. There's even a whole section later on in the book about how to get around these AMOGs and still pick up women they're interested in. This is a dichotomy that has been popular pretty much since nerd culture came into the public consciousness. Especially from the 70s and 80s onwards, we begin to see media depicting a certain type of guy. A quiet, socially awkward nerd who, we're told, has a heart of gold, but struggles to get female attention. In this department, he is constantly losing out to the shallow, yet muscular and confident jock who women seem to gravitate towards, even though we the audience know they're wrong for doing so. Movies like Revenge of the Nerds made this the whole point of the plot. But this idea that there's this kind of guy that women should want but don't is all over the early parts of the game when Strauss still identifies himself as a nice guy AFC. At one point he writes, "It wasn't too late to become what every woman wants. Not what she says she wants, but what she really wants, deep inside, beyond her social programming." This is the thought process I want to unpack and debunk in this section because it goes a lot further beyond the pages of the game. The hit Netflix show Adolescence centers around the character of Jamie Miller, a 13-year-old British boy who kills a female classmate after being radicalized by incel ideology online. In one of the scenes in the show, he explains one of the manosphere's core concepts, the 80-20 rule.
80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. I do think they're right about that though.
The idea that 80% of women are attracted to only 20% of men, leaving the majority of the rest of the 80% alone, is a pervasive idea, even amongst people who aren't incels or even engage in manosphere thinking at all. Now, I spent several hours looking into this claim, and basically, there's no basis for it. It's a number that gets floated around a lot, but the best origin source for it is this article by just some random guy with the handle Worst Online Dater. He conducted his own study in which he just asked 27 women about their swiping behavior on Tinder. People then take this data and misapply it to the Pareto principle, an idea in economics which states that 80% of causes come from 20% of effects. So for example, if you say that 80% of global wealth is owned by 20% of people, which is actually true by the way. But in case it needs saying, what this Tinder guy did doesn't even remotely come close to being a study or data that would be worth drawing a conclusion from. Using self-reported data from 27 people you know and then making huge sweeping judgments about male-female dating norms is not good science. But this idea has become incredibly popular, even if its specifics can be disputed. Anecdotally, most men do struggle on dating apps, and the real scientific data consistently shows that men do perform worse than women on online matchmaking apps, though nowhere near the 80-20 split, more like 34% worse. This is where the manosphere ideologies come in and become very effective, because men are doing worse than women in the age of internet dating. And so that creates a vulnerability. You as a guy who's not getting lots of romantic attention are going to naturally feel bad about yourself. Society has long maintained that one of the major judges of a man's value is in his ability to attract female attention. So if you're failing to do that, well, you're failing to be a man. That's why people like Andrew Tate have become so successful in the last several years, because this is where they come in and say, hey, it's not your fault, it's women who are the problem. Society has filled their heads with dumb ideas about feminism, and you're the one who suffers. Of course, the truth is that all of this is nobody's fault. It is really unfortunate that lots of people out there are lonely, and as someone who's been single for a long time, I can tell you that the dating scene can often suck. But the dating norms of society have shifted due to a combination of like 10 different factors. Online dating is just one of them. And for all the awful, shitty consequences, there's also plenty of good ones. 50 years ago, practically every couple met via school or family friends, making the dating pool incredibly small. Combined with laws and norms that made it harder for women to have their own financial freedom or get divorced, and you'd end up with so many unhappy and even abusive relationships. And very little or sometimes no real choice in who actually becomes your partner. So it's good that we live in an era with so much freedom now. But it's hard to keep that perspective when you fail on an individual level when it comes to online dating. It is a lot easier, psychologically speaking, to dodge any responsibility for your own success or lack of it, and even easier if you can blame it tangibly on someone else, like women in their entirety. On top of that, the reason these kinds of ideas are effective is because they often target young men, guys who, by virtue of their age, are obviously not going to have had a lot of romantic experience. This is a good point then to bring things back to the game, because one of the themes in this book is that a huge proportion of the men they're recruiting to their cause are in high school or college. Of course, there are older guys like Style himself, who are grown adults who've been unsuccessful in the romance department. But most of the guys posting on their forums, and a lot of the guys who come to take workshops from first Mystery and then Style himself later in the book, are in their late teens or early 20s. This is why I think it's really important to talk about this issue, because it crops up at a time when men are naturally going to be susceptible to this kind of bullshit. If you're at that age, you're going to still be figuring out who you are, you're probably socially awkward, and almost certainly not good at picking up women. And so you're going to be ready to accept bad answers to the question of why you're not getting a lot of romantic attention. And this is where we can return to the dichotomy of the nice guy versus the alpha male. If you're not scoring with lots of women, you're not going to identify yourself as the alpha male jock described in the game, the AMOG. So that means instead, you're left being the only given alternative, the AFC, the average frustrated chump. The nice guy that women should want, but don't. And at the end of the day, who doesn't think they're a nice person? So returning to that quote I mentioned from the book about women saying they want one thing and actually want another thing, when you apply that to this context, it becomes so much more toxic. Because once you create this false opposition that confident assholes get girls and nice guys don't get girls, it A, justifies everything you do as the actions of a nice guy even when you're not being nice, and B, encourages you to deliberately be a dick because that's what women want. It absolves you of any guilt or consequences even when you know you're being shitty, because female biology secretly needs you to behave like this. We've already mentioned negging in this video, but there's loads of other plays that essentially try to degrade or trick women, like what I'm about to describe. After diving deep into the pickup artist community, Neil Strauss, aka Style, has quickly gotten good at using the tactics to pick up women. So good, in fact, that he's become Mystery's new best friend and right-hand man. At this point in the book, Style starts hosting the workshops alongside Mystery, teaching other guys how to do what they do. As part of that, he advocates bringing a prop bag with various tools you can use to pick up women. He actually lists out what he brought, and some of the stuff in there is inoffensive. Breath mints, condoms, paper. But there's also stuff like this. 1 piece of dryer lint for the lint opener. Walk up to a woman, stop, wordlessly remove lint, hidden in the palm of your hand, from her clothing, ask, how long has that been there? Then hand her the piece of lint. And 1 small black light for pointing out lint and dandruff on girls' clothing, an egg. Again, no explanation of how you explain the black light you're flashing at random women at the club, but this is where the nice guy conception completely falls apart. Because you can tell yourself that you're alone because you're too nice, But no remotely good human being wants to do this to another person in order to manipulate them into having sex with you. We saw this idea at play in the Big Bang Theory episode as well, and that's why these concepts are so influential and dangerous. Even when Howard is being a dick, we're still expected to buy this conception that he's a nice guy, therefore everything nice guys do is justified. There's a great video from the pop culture detective called The Adorkable Misogyny of the Big Bang Theory that explores this idea further, and I highly recommend you watch it. It talks about how characters in the Big Bang Theory use their position as nice guy nerds to get away with horrendous acts of disrespect towards women, as well as violating their boundaries and safety. The nice guy can position themselves as fundamentally harmless even when they are doing things that either damage a woman's psychology or invade her physical space and privacy. This is why it's doubly dangerous to sell this conception of the world to young men who don't know any better. And the game even acknowledges all of this at a point. During that same workshop that Style brings his prop bag to, one of the guys there is called Sasha, a young and socially awkward dude who's never had any real romantic connection with women. Style and Mystery begin to teach Sasha their various techniques on how to manipulate women. And how does he justify all of this to himself? Well, Style says, as anyone who reads newspapers or true crime books knows, a significant percentage of violent crime, from kidnappings to shooting sprees, is the result of frustrated sexual impulses and desires of males. By socializing guys like Sasha, Mystery and I were making the world a safer place. This is such a dark sentiment to read because, again, it pretends like there's only two paths men can walk when they're sexually frustrated: shoot up schools or become a pickup artist. The tragic thing is that there's a nugget of sad truth in here. Remember, I mentioned earlier in the video that the original incel community came as a response to pickup artists. So when it comes to desperately frustrated men online, there is a dichotomy between becoming a violent extremist who hates women or becoming a pickup artist who demeans and dehumanizes women. The only sure outcome is that women will suffer for it. Style inadvertently admits this because after his paragraph about Sasha, he goes on to write this: "A gulf was opening between men and women in my mind. I was beginning to see women solely as measuring instruments to give me feedback on how I was progressing as a pickup artist. They were crash test dummies, identifiable only by hair colors and numbers. A blonde 7, a brunette 10. Even when I was having a deep conversation, learning about a woman's dreams and point of view, in my mind I was just ticking off a box in my routine marked rapport. In bonding with men, I was developing an unhealthy attitude towards the opposite sex. Even the good path of becoming a pickup artist results in men viewing women as objects. But of course, it doesn't have to be this way. There is another reality, one where rather than teach these guys deceptive techniques, Style and Mystery could have taught Sasha how to be a better conversationalist. Rather than teach him openers which neg a woman, they could have taught him fun conversation pieces and how to ask questions that get to know someone. Like most things in life, being good at talking to people is very much a skill you can hone. Sure, there are some people who are naturals at it, but just like Style does with pickup artistry, practice and good principles can lead to anyone becoming good at talking to people. But this false duality that the game keeps trying to create between nice guys and jocks, between becoming a pickup artist or a violent murderer, these crop up time and time again, not just in this book, but in all media. Framed in this way, the things they do don't seem so bad. The sentiment of, hey, at least I'm not doing that, becomes an excuse to get away with other, often equally horrible behavior. And there's no better example of its proof and impact in media than the cult hit sitcom How I Met Your Mother. In my teenage years, I was obsessed with the show How I Met Your Mother. So much so that there was a point in time when, if you showed me the opening frame of any episode, just the first shot, I could tell you exactly what happened in the rest of it. As proof, here's me holding a gift that my friend gave me for my 17th birthday, The Bro Code. It's a book that the character Barney cites many times in the show as a set of rules for how bros, or men, should behave, and was eventually released as real merchandise for viewers to buy. But what I and most people didn't realize at the time is that the Bro Code was directly inspired by the game, as was the character of Barney Stinson, arguably the most iconic character of the show. Now, for those who don't know, this show was huge in its time. It was supposed to be the next Friends, at least until Big Bang Theory came around, and it had 13 million viewers in the US alone for its finale. For context, a show like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is one of the more popular modern sitcoms, has only ever peaked at 3.6 million viewers. But as an adult, I now don't look back at How I Met Your Mother with any fondness. Instead, what sticks out to me is how badly the show is aged, especially when it comes to its portrayal of men, women, and dating. How I Met Your Mother follows the story of Ted, who is in the setup of the show, telling his kids the story of how he met their mother. That's the framing narrative, so every episode is told as a flashback to his kids about his time spent in New York with his friends Marshall, Lily, Barney, and Robin. Of course, the majority of the show is just your normal sitcom setup, a small group of friends having adventures, shenanigans, and huge life events as they go from wild party goers in their 20s to eventually settling down and having kids and families in their 30s. Marshall and Lily are the wholesome couple, together since the first day of college and, except for one brief period where they break up, are shown to be the ideal couple. Then there's Robin, who begins the show as Ted's once-in-a-lifetime crush and is bait and switched as the potential mother he's describing to his kids in the first episode, only to end up becoming integrated into the group as a friend and referred to as your Aunt Robin in the narration. Of course, the running theme in the show is that Ted never really gets over Robin, and they constantly bring this romantic element back in, with the two dating for a season, then breaking up, then having messy mixed feelings as they struggle to remain friends, only for Robin to eventually get with Barney, break up with him, then also have mixed feelings and eventually marry him. And then they get divorced in the finale, and there's more stuff, but please God, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to discuss the ending of the show. Trust me, you don't want me ranting for another hour. So finally, there's Ted and Barney, the two characters we will now focus on in this video. Ted is the devil. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Ted is framed as the nice guy romantic. The show is anchored around his quest for love and his undying belief that there's some fated story out there waiting for him, full of grand gestures and movie scene romance. This contrasts him well with Barney, who, by comparison, is the degenerate, forever single guy of the group. Because he exists, we're meant to think of Ted as the much better alternative of masculinity. But that ends up being problematic in ways we'll discuss. Barney's character is that he's a pickup artist and not just inspired by the game, but directly responding to it. The game released in 2005, the same year as How I Met Your Mother, and actually in the same month, weirdly enough. But even before its release, Strauss had published a very popular article chronicling his journey into the world of pickup artists. It was so popular that Tom Cruise specifically asked for Neil Strauss to interview him, pretty much just to tell him that what he's doing is kinda lame. Strauss talks about all of this in the game itself, and comes away with the conclusion that Tom Cruise is the ultimate alpha male. But while he has his religion, Scientology, Strauss says he has his religion, pickup artist bullshit. And you can actually see the influence of the game on How I Met Your Mother increase as the show goes on, presumably as the creators begin to draw more directly from it. At the start of the show, Barney is a guy who loves seducing women and he's a bit chaotic and whimsical. But womanizer characters have existed in media for as long as we've been telling stories. That's nothing new. But as season 1 progresses, you can see Barney becoming more gamified. Rather than just hit on women, he starts incorporating tactics, using deceit and manipulation to seduce women rather than just charm and persistence. This is the unique influence of the game, and why it's such a damaging trend that has only grown in pop culture. He starts doing things directly mentioned in the book, like peacocking.
One of the 24 similarities between girls and fish is that they're both attracted to shiny objects. You really never...
Barney also starts creating rules and laws and specific plays, like the lemon law and the hot crazy scale. These are an exact parallel to how Mystery behaves, coming up with all these concepts like the rules of what an alpha male should be. Later on in the show, Barney will create the infamous playbook, a set of tricks and elaborate schemes that he uses to pick up women. All of this is clearly the footprint of Neil Strauss. But you might at this point ask, why does that matter? So there's a character who behaves like a pickup artist, so what? In fact, this is probably a good time to address the argument in defense of these kind of depictions. Something you'll hear a lot is that this is all humor. It's just a joke. Reading into it this seriously is to miss the point of a sitcom. But what that argument fails to see is that even humor has logic to it, and says something about what we think is funny. When it comes to all the scenes where women are nagged and tricked and lied to in order for some guy to get them into bed, the butt of the joke is always women. And those jokes are never clever. A great example of this idea is the entirety of The Bro Code, the book I mentioned earlier, which is written by Matt Kuhn, one of the writers of How I Met Your Mother. Some of the rules in the book are fairly generic and inoffensive, like Article 2. A bro is always entitled to do something stupid as long as the rest of his bros are all doing it. But the vast majority of the book is just one of two things: gender stereotypes and gay panic. For those unfamiliar, gay panic in media, especially sitcoms, is when two characters, usually straight male characters, end up doing something that could be even vaguely seen as homoerotic, and this freaks them out in a way that's meant to be humorous. You see this a lot in Friends, for example, like in the episode where Joey and Ross start napping together and everyone tries to make them feel weird about it. So in the bro code, we have Article 29. If two bros decide to catch a movie together, they may not attend a screening that begins after 4:40 p.m. Also, despite the cost savings, they shall not split a tub of popcorn, choosing instead to procure individual bags. Now, when people say it's just a joke, I think the correct response is, okay, then what is the joke? Explain the humor to me. In this case, the joke is that going to see a movie with your male friends at night is somehow gay, because it's vaguely reminiscent of a date, and splitting popcorn is gay, and we all know that being gay is bad, right? Similarly, there's Article 77, bros don't cuddle. And then underneath, an exception about conserving body heat in an emergency is crossed out. Again, the joke is just being gay is something we want to avoid doing as men. And that's not funny to me. Women, whenever they are mentioned in the bro code, are usually just objects for sex. For example, in the introduction, there's a Q&A that asks, question, can only dudes be bros? Answer, you don't need to be a guy to be somebody's bro, provided you uphold the moral values contained within this sacred canon. When a woman sets a guy up with her busty friend, she's acting as a bro. And if she sets him up with other hot friends after he slept with the first one and never called her again, then she's officially his bro. So again, women are given validity only insofar as they facilitate men's objectifying behavior, either as the objects of sex or as enablers to getting men laid. And perhaps most interestingly, there's Article 4. A bro never divulges the existence of the bro code to a woman. Then underneath that it says, note, if you were a woman reading this, first let me apologize. It was never my intention for this book to contain so much math. Second, I urge you to look at this document for what it is. A piece of fiction meant to entertain a broad audience through the prism of stereotypical gender differences. That broad audience, by the way, being straight men only, apparently. Clearly, no real person would actually believe or adhere to the vulgar rules contained within. And then an asterisk leads to another joke about how the note was all a trick to fool women again. This is a really key technique called lampshading, which writers will often use for the exact reason used here in the bro code, to deflect any accountability for their bad, derogatory writing. Rather than write an actually funny joke, you instead write something that is just, women are bad, being gay is bad, insert offensive stereotype here. And then, if you acknowledge that you know you're being bigoted, you can get away with saying it because then it's just a joke. A great example of this comes from the Big Bang Theory. In this scene, Raj is gathering a bunch of comics for a session monitoring a telescope, and Sheldon questions if he's got enough.
By my estimate, you've only selected 7 hours of reading material. That's even factoring in your difficulty in parsing American comic book idioms like BAMF and SNCC.
Is that racist? It feels racist.
Don't be oversensitive. He's calling you illiterate, not your race.
After this, Raj says that he'll be fine because he and Howard intend to play Indian Monopoly, to which Howard replies,
Actually, Indian Monopoly is just like regular, except the money's in rupees. Instead of hotels, you build call centers. And when you pick a chance card, you might die of dysentery. Oh, just FYI, that was racist.
So we have here a perfect example of Howard saying something racist, the laugh track plays and the audience finds this hilarious, and then to shield itself from any criticism, the show acknowledges that yes, that was racist. Topped in there is even a bit where Howard tells Raj he's being too sensitive for worrying about the racist attitudes of his friends, only for them to immediately prove his point. This is the same approach that both The Big Bang Theory and How I Met Your Mother bring to women, where they will make sexist jokes or plot points, acknowledge that it's sexist, and then if women have a problem with it, it's their fault for overreacting and not seeing it as harmless fun as we saw in that episode with Penny and Howard. Of course, the game does this too. There's a guy in the pickup artist community called Ross Jeffries, whose whole thing is that he says he's a master of hypnosis and uses suggestive language to trigger arousal in women without them realizing it. Again, very dark. Strauss then tries these techniques himself and says, "To be honest, I had no idea whether this was turning her on or not. She was listening and she seemed to be enjoying it, but she didn't start sucking my fingers like the girl in Grimble's story. In fact, I felt not only a little stupid, but also lecherous, using the pretext of hypnosis to touch her. Once more, if you acknowledge that what you're doing is wrong, you can apparently keep doing it."
Okay, for the record, what you guys are doing is really creepy.
You know what? If it's creepy to use the internet, military satellites, and robot aircraft to find a house full of gorgeous young models so that I can drop in on them unexpectedly, then fine, I'm creepy.
By using lampshading, what writers actually do is normalize everyday versions of this kind of behavior. Everyday sexism, racism, and other such offenses become framed as harmless, as things that everyone can engage in or find humorous. But of course, we saw that when the butt of the joke isn't women or some other marginalized group, then we suddenly realize how hurtful words are. If Penny tells Howard he's a loser, now we recognize how damaging it can be to say mean things to someone. So hopefully we can now deflect the "it's just a joke" defense for this trope, because this is also the same thing How I Met Your Mother does with Ted and Barney as characters. Barney is the misogynist idiot, and if we acknowledge that, we can get away with showing him being a misogynist and still frame him as a lovable, nice guy.
It's gonna be okay. You're a good guy. You will get through this.
Actually, this clip you just saw brings me to another point. Another reason why it's just a joke and why other characters acknowledging the problematic behavior is not good enough. This episode comes in season 9, the final season, and is a flashback to a few months prior. In the present day, Barney and Robin are about to get married, but in this flashback, she and Lily are giving Barney challenges for picking up women. They challenge him to pick up a girl wearing a trash bag, while only making dolphin noises, and he even does one where he pretends to be Ryan Gosling.
You passed my test, girl.
Ryan?
So we have here two female characters enabling Barney's behavior that treats women as nothing but conquests, literal objects for him to win as part of a game and then immediately discard. But rather than the contempt to be pointed at Barney, or even Lily and Robin who spur him on, the contempt from the show is aimed at the women, with Robin calling one and lecturing her for falling for Barney's plays.
Hello? Hi. Did you just give your phone number to a guy who was squeaking like a dolphin? Yeah. Honey, listen to me. I need you to take a full year, and just be celibate, okay? No boys. 1 year. Think you know I'm right about this.
You're right.
Yeah.
And yet, as we showed earlier, this is the same episode where Tracy, the titular mother of the show, runs into Barney for the first time and tells him he's a good guy who's only seducing women because he's unhappy about something else. This is where I want to mention the endorsement for Barney's behavior that comes in the show, both explicit and implicit. Of course, throughout the show, other characters will condemn Barney for his actions. They will call him gross, a pig, a creep, for all the ways in which he tricks, abuses, and degrades women. They will sometimes even acknowledge that his behavior is sociopathic. But that's not really condemnation when they continue to spend time with him and claim him as one of their best friends, part of a small group of 5 who hang out every single day. You can't really claim that you think someone's actions are reprehensible if you never actually offer any real resistance to them. Barney is never really met with any consequences for his behavior, at least not from his friends. Sure, he occasionally fails and has egg on his face, but he also succeeds incredibly often. For example, in this episode in season 5, we're introduced for the first time to Barney's playbook, a literal book where he writes down a bunch of his elaborate tricks to seduce women. We then see little flashes of these plays in action, like the Mrs. Stinsfire.
Now, Kappas, after our disciplinary hearing for lewd behavior last semester, we have been assigned a new house mom. I'd like you to meet Mrs. Stinsfire. Hello, girls!
I should probably explain for a generation of people who have no idea what this is. It's an homage to the cult 90s hit Mrs. Doubtfire, where a divorced dad pretends to be an elderly nanny in order to get hired by his ex-wife to look after their children. Of course, some of the plays are outlandish and farcical like this one, so unrealistic that they're obviously not meant to be taken literally. But it's not always about whether the guys can or would actually run these plays or not. it's about the misogyny that runs at the heart of them. And as we've seen from the game, even some of the plays that normal people think would be obviously stupid, pickup artists can and will make use of them. I refer you to the "I'm gay" opener from earlier. There's also plays like the "Don't Drink That," where Barney pretends that some guy spiked a girl's drink in order to win that girl's trust, which is super dark for multiple reasons. For one, it clearly acknowledges the danger that women do face in the world of dating. A simple night out can be a life-threatening experience because creepy guys will do anything to get laid. And yet, here Barney is weaponizing that to position himself as somehow trustworthy, knowing full well he just wants to sleep with this woman and then discard her. Now, if she was willingly agreeing to a one-night stand, that would be absolutely fine. That's a perfectly healthy thing for an adult to do. But it's never like that. It's never about informed consent. It's always about manipulating and deceiving women into something they don't actually want. So continuing with the playbook episode, the gang condemn Barney because he runs one of his plays on Lily's friend Shelley. Shelley is also a teacher at Lily's school, and Lily says she's been saving her to set her up with Ted at the right time. But before that date can take place, Shelley ends up running into and hooking up with Barney, who seduces her with an elaborate play called the Lorenzo von Matterhorn. Note that they only get angry when the woman is someone they know. They're more than happy for Barney to deceive strangers who they don't mind being degraded and discarded. For those women, they express their contempt.
Look, if these girls are dumb enough to fall for this crap, they have it coming.
Agreed.
But to get revenge on Barney for hooking up with Shelley, Lily steals the playbook, prompting Barney to double down and turn up at the apartment to declare that he will be downstairs at the bar doing a play called The Scuba Diver, which is not listed in the playbook. Too curious to ignore it, the gang ask him what the hell the scuba diver is, and he tells them that he will perform it on the blonde girl at the bar. Annoyed, Lily then goes up to the girl and warns her about Barney.
Hi, you see that guy over there in the scuba suit? You thinking of going and talking to him?
No.
Good. He's seriously the biggest jerk on the face of the earth.
How do you know him?
Oh, he's one of my best friends.
Claire, the blonde girl, then joins the group, and they all explain the history with Barney and the playbook. But they're still too curious about what the scuba diver play is to let it rest, Claire included. So they all go back over to Barney to ask him what the hell the play is. As Claire sits down, Barney begins to run the play on her, only to stop and give this supposedly emotional speech to Robin, who at this point in the show he had been in a serious relationship with for a while, but recently broke up with.
I can't do this. Robin, I am so sorry. I guess this breakup's been tougher on me than I thought. I think this playbook was just a way to take my mind off of things.
It's okay. It's been tough on me too.
After this declaration, Lily tells Barney that he doesn't even need these plays because the real Barney is cooler than the contents of the book. Barney says, "Oh really?" and then asks Claire if, after hearing all she's heard, she thinks the real Barney is the kind of guy someone like her could possibly want to date. Lily then interjects that before Claire makes her decision, she should know that underneath this scuba suit is an amazing guy who is one of her best friends, which prompts Robin to chime in as well, before the group peer pressure Claire to agree to a date with Barney.
He's a good guy.
Come on, Claire, go out with him. It's just a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, it can't hurt.
All right.
As Barney then leaves with Claire, Lily gets a text to look under the table. That's where the group finds a page from the playbook, the one that documents the scuba diver. Here, Barney reveals that the whole episode was all a play. Everything from telling the group about the playbook, to calculating that if you bang Lily's friend, she'll be mad and get revenge on you by stealing the playbook, and warning your target away from you, all of it is part of Barney's grand plan, which concludes with this line.
When Lily and the girl ask what the scuba diver is, take off your mask, give them some spiel about your deep-seated insecurities, which don't really exist because, let's face it, you're awesome. Feeling bad for you, Lily talks you up to the girl, who then agrees to go get coffee with you. And it is on.
So the episode ends in Barney's triumph, his plays are vindicated, and the emotional realness he displayed is revealed to just be part of his plan to seduce women. Now, if the context of all of this wasn't the constant misogyny of it all, you might say this is a really funny and entertaining setup and payoff. I remember how much I thought this was hilarious and cool when I was 17, but it is based on misogyny, and I don't find it funny anymore. That's basically true for the entire show, which has aged really badly. Whenever the show is critical of Barney, it's in the most light and inconsequential ways. In fact, this is equally true in The Big Bang Theory. Think back to Howard's behavior and the examples we've seen in this video. When Howard negs Penny, the most Leonard does to stop him is a gentle intervention of, "Are you sure you want to do this?" But ultimately, he lets Howard keep behaving the way he does, and when Penny blows up at him, Leonard now decides to intervene forcefully, but not on behalf of Penny, but rather on behalf of Howard, forcing Penny to apologize to him. Similarly, in the example we saw more recently, when he calls Howard creepy, that's all the extent of what he does. In that episode, Howard uses geo-tracking and a spy drone from a friend he has in the military to track down the house full of models from the reality TV show America's Next Top Model, which he's been watching with Raj. This is with the intent to show up under a false pretext and hit on them, which he does at the end of the episode. The most Leonard will ever do is some light words of disapproval, much like the characters in How I Met Your Mother do with Barney. But they never seriously do anything to stop this person they consider their close friend. And this is just the times when the group is neutral or disapproving of Barney's plans. There are constant moments throughout the show when the gang are actively cheering on or encouraging Barney's behavior.
Tonight's the night, guys. I've tried it before. I failed every time. This time, I am gonna do it. Tonight, I pick up a lesbian. Robin, I need your lipstick.
Sometimes, characters will actually mimic Barney's deceptive behavior towards women, despite how much they claim to condemn it. Like in this episode where Barney realizes he has feelings for Robin and wants to confess his love for her, but she, oblivious to this, wants to set him up with a girl. And how does she do it? By lying to this waitress and telling her that Barney is a famous baseball star.
So, as I was saying, April, Barney is the Yankees' new second baseman. And Barney, April asked if tomorrow you could hit a goal for her during the baseball match. You can't make this stuff up.
By using deceit to help Barney get laid, the characters showed that they may pretend to dislike Barney's methods, but they clearly believe it is what you're supposed to do to pick up women. Now, if all of this ended with Barney, we might finish talking about the show here. But we're just getting started. And oh boy, it's about to get a lot worse. Now, before I go further in this video, I hope I've earned a few moments of your time to talk about this channel. The Soak is run entirely without corporate sponsorships, selling you shady products to make a quick buck. But that does mean it becomes a lot harder to make ends meet. Videos like this one take hundreds of hours of research, quite literally. Not only did I have to read all 450 odd pages of the game, but I rewatched every single episode of How I Met Your Mother for reasons that should be clear by now and will only become clearer in this next section. That show alone has 208 episodes of 20 plus minutes each. So in total, that was over 70 hours of time, not to mention all the additional shows I watched, footage I collected, academic research, and time spent scripting and editing. The script for this video, plus the research, is well over 20,000 words long. And as a sample, here's all the notes from just the game and the Big Bang Theory and all the episodes of How I Met Your Mother that you're seeing on screen now. I want my videos to always be well researched, thorough, and made in good faith, which is why I spend so long making sure I've gotten everything right. But that is my choice at the end of the day. I love doing that, and I'm not asking for pity for the work only I am making me do. Instead, what I would ask is that if you're the kind of person who enjoys that, who wants that in their content, then please consider supporting this channel directly. Backing from viewers like yourself is the reason the channel has been able to stay afloat, because if a video I take so long to make performs poorly in the algorithm, it makes ends hard to meet. So if you feel comfortable, I would really appreciate your monthly pledge on Patreon, where you can also get yourself rewards like previews, your name in the end credits, and much more. Alternatively, if you prefer to just give a one-time donation, then you can do so via PayPal, the links to all of which are in the video description. I want to take this moment to thank all the people for their PayPal donations and the kind messages I've received. I don't have a way of actually responding directly to those of you who send them, so I'll take the time now to say that your words of support are genuinely what keep me going and light up my day every time I read them. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. But now back to the video. Because Barney exists in How I Met Your Mother and is a guy trying to convince women that he's a genie whose penis grants wishes, it's easy to uncritically accept the show's categorization that Ted is, by contrast, a nice guy. But I'd argue and will argue that the presentation of Ted is actually more damaging to our ideas of how men can and should behave. At least with Barney, there's an attempt from the show to challenge his unsavory behavior, as we discussed in the previous section. But there isn't with Ted, and worse than that, the show glorifies his actions as something admirable and romantic. And yet, the minute you look at Ted's actions through a different lens, you realize that this guy is a psychopath rivaling Barney. I think the best way I can succinctly explain this is by taking you through an episode which I find to be really disturbing. And it comes quite early on in the show. Season 1, Episode 4, Return of the Shirt. The premise of this episode is that Ted finds a shirt in his closet that he'd basically forgotten he owned. Where previously he thought it was ugly, he now thinks it's actually a super cool shirt. This prompts him to wonder if all his previously formed opinions on things were wrong as well, like his choice of drink, food, and most importantly, women. He asks his friends if there's a girl they can think of that he dated, but maybe let go of too soon. And the gang settle on the best candidate being a girl named Natalie. So Ted calls Natalie in the hopes of getting back together with her, and when he introduces himself on the phone, she tells him in no uncertain terms how she feels about him.
It's Ted Mosby.
Go to hell.
The backstory to this is that a few years ago when Ted and Natalie were dating, Ted decided he didn't want a long-term commitment with Natalie. Her birthday was coming up and he didn't want to splurge on an expensive gift either, so Ted dumped her on her birthday via the answering machine. Now at this point, I should mention that the show is very critical of Ted for this behavior, and that's fine. I'm actually not concerned with Ted being a jerk because that part is supposed to be relatable in the context of a sitcom. We've all been unpleasant or done things we regret both in and out of a romantic context, so an episode exploring a time when Ted was selfish and inconsiderate to a former partner in this way is fine. Well, it's not fine, but it's human. Lily hits and berates Ted for his actions, and Ted, when narrating to his kids, tells them that he was a jerk for what he did. But the problem is not that he was a young, selfish guy who broke up with someone in a bad manner. The problem is actually what he does next. We cut to a shot of Natalie in her apartment, and she hears the doorbell ring. But when she goes to the peephole to see who it is, she sees that a stuffed monkey is shoved up against it. For context, Natalie is shown to love sock puppets, and this is a detail about her that Ted remembers fondly. Confused, as you would be, Natalie opens the door and finds that hiding behind the stuffed monkey is Ted. Immediately, she slams the door shut in his face. But that's not a clear enough message to Ted, apparently, and so he continues to knock and says the following.
Natalie, come on! I just want to say I'm sorry. I only came down here because you wouldn't take my call.
Now, on a human level, you can understand Ted's desire to make things right. As a person with an all too strong guilty conscience, I know how bad I feel when someone is upset at me or when I feel like I've wronged them somehow. But this is not an apology in good faith. This wasn't an incident that Ted was feeling bad about and wanted to set right. It was something he didn't care about until he decided he wanted Natalie back. And he's quickly going from well-intentioned nice guy to escalating into some pretty alarming behavior. First, there's just the fact that he turns up at her apartment, which is hugely disconcerting. Here's a person who has made clear that she doesn't want to hear from you. After all, she told him on the phone to go to hell and then ignored his calls. You tried to reach out, fair enough, but she's repeatedly made it known that she doesn't even want to talk to you. So what makes it okay to just turn up unannounced to her front door? This is where it's important to mention that the show does think all of this is okay, and this is the part it doesn't condemn but actually glorifies as Ted being romantic. And it does so because it's only looking at things from Ted's point of view. We, the audience, know that Ted is a sweet guy, right? We know that he's genuine in wanting Natalie back and wouldn't do anything to harm her, right? So it's all okay. But now, think about this situation from Natalie's perspective. Here is an ex, a guy you had a really unhappy breakup with, trying to reconnect with you. He unfortunately still has your home phone number and keeps trying to call you. You tell him to go to hell and that you don't want to speak with him and ignore his calls. But then you realize that he still knows where you live and he shows up to your house unannounced. Again, we know this is a cozy sitcom and Ted is a nice guy, but in real life this is a situation that is absolutely terrifying. A guy who won't take no for an answer showing up to your house is a nightmare scenario that any woman watching will know and maybe sadly even have experienced. What lengths will he go to? What might he do? Will he wait for me to leave and try to ambush me, or will he try to follow me back from work someday? The level to which this would make a person feel unsafe cannot be described. On top of that, Ted is already relying on deception. Much like Barney does with his plays and pickup artists advocate for in the game, Ted tricks Natalie by obscuring the peephole with the stuffed monkey. He knows she wouldn't open the door for him, but rather than that giving him pause to think, maybe I shouldn't be here, he just works around it with this trick. But it's about to get even worse. Since Natalie isn't answering, Ted says, "Okay, fine, I'm just gonna leave this sock monkey here, goodbye," and then pretends to stomp his feet as if he's leaving. Natalie, thinking he's gone, opens the door to pick up the sock monkey, which is when Ted jumps around the corner to make her scream out in shock. Again, this is a genuinely terrifying situation we're being presented here, but it's framed as romantic and well-intentioned. Ted decides to trick Natalie into opening the door by pretending to have dropped the gift and left, only to then jump out and surprise her with this bait and switch. Ancient Greeks besieging the city-state of Troy would have been proud. Ted then grabs the monkey and positions himself in the doorway to stop her closing the door. He says he wants to apologize, and Natalie, who has every right to not accept the apology, tries to close the door shut, but Ted forcefully stops her from closing it and makes sure she now has no choice but to listen to whatever it is he has to say. Now the funny thing is that there's probably some set of people watching thinking, it's not that bad, he's overblowing this. Which honestly would make it surprising if you've still stuck around this long. But then there's the rest of the people watching who are thinking, yeah, this is how this woman dies tonight. Put yourself in Natalie's shoes, and you now have a man who has physically tricked and forced his way into your house and is demanding that you go out with him, refusing to take no for an answer. Genuinely so scary, and this is what the show frames as romantic. This is the part of the show where Ted is supposedly being aspirational, doing the sweet, admirable things that we should want to see more of in the world. In the end, the show vindicates all this behavior because Ted manages to convince Natalie to go out with him by putting on this cutesy voice and pretending to be a sock puppet talking.
Please, Natalie, give the guy a chance. Self-respect is overrated.
The next scene begins with 2 coffee cups on the table, implying they went for coffee like Ted proposes, and then are back at Natalie's apartment having just had sex. So Ted's nice guy romantic gesture shtick works out and the two begin dating again. This is why the show's presentation of Ted is so much more damaging than its presentation of Barney. At least Barney's misogyny gets perfunctory criticism, even though we've already seen that that's ultimately not genuine criticism. For all his deceptions and gambits, I can't think of a single instance where Barney showed up to a woman's house who has told him she doesn't want to see him, then tricked and forced his way into her apartment, refusing to leave unless she gives him a chance. This is why the rhetoric of the game and media like it is so pernicious when it says that there's these things that women want without realizing it, or things that women say they don't want but actually do want. It creates this worldview that women's words and women's anger are not to be taken at face value for what they are, but rather as an additional obstacle to be broken down. Natalie's clear indicators of disinterest are shown to not be genuine, but actually just prideful resistance that Ted needed to break down through sheer persistence and effort. The game has loads of instances where it basically explicitly advocates for this. At various points in the book, Strauss shares messages from the pickup artist forum boards that are apparently verbatim posts from other guys. One such guy is a 40-year-old man named Zan, who's an advocate for a technique called cocky funny, which is where you maintain a level of meanness and arrogance but keep it just funny enough that the girl is still into you. He writes, "The weakness of women is language and words. Fortunately, that is one of my strong points. If they try to repel my advances, I act like they are from Mars and what they're saying doesn't make any sense." That's on page 135. On page 215, Stahl himself writes, "Once unleashed, a woman's physical needs are often more ravenous than a man's. It's just that there are certain barriers and programming walls to be overcome in order for her to feel comfortable enough to surrender to them." By that point, Stahl has become his own fully fledged version of a pickup artist and becomes a guru and mentor to other guys trying to learn to pick up women. And so he continues as part of his advice. "You make out, you remove her shirt, she removes your shirt, you start to remove her bra. What's this? She's stopping you from going any further? The PUAs have a name for this, last minute resistance, or LMR. Back up 1 or 2 steps, then continue. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's not real. It's just ASD, anti-slut defense. She doesn't want you to think she's easy, so you cuddle, you talk. She asks dumb questions like how many siblings you have, you answer honestly and make her feel comfortable again. Then you start from the top. You make out, then remove her bra. She lets you this time." This particular extract goes on and it gets really bleak, so I'm not going to read it any further because I think it would be genuinely upsetting for some viewers. He just talks about how if she again tries to stop things, you use emotionally manipulative tactics like giving her the silent treatment to make her want to please you again and all that kind of nonsense. This is why I compare all of this to that scene we saw with Ted. Some viewers will just watch that and say, "Hey, Natalie ultimately did want to date Ted, so his actions were justified. But that's exactly why it's such a dangerous precedent to set. Far too much media depicts scenes like this where a woman says no or is shown to be angry and verbally disinterested in a man, only for the guy's persistence to pay off, and she eventually relents and reveals her true feelings of actually wanting it all along. Of course, this isn't the only time Ted does this, far from it. Most of his significant relationships in the show, in fact, rely on him pursuing a woman who doesn't want to be pursued. Victoria tells him that she doesn't want to see him in the real world, away from the context of the wedding at which they meet, but he tracks her down and finds her anyways, and she thanks him for it. Stella tells him multiple times that if he asks her out, she will reject him, and then does reject him when he asks her out, and he still doesn't give up. Ultimately, he gets the girl, and in fact, the whole lesson of that episode is him teaching his kids how to turn a no into a yes.
And that, kids, is how you turn a no into a yes.
Of course, with Robin, there are multiple back and forths of her telling him that they can't be together, only for him to refuse to accept that answer.
This is gonna happen. She can't say it's not meant to be. It is meant to be, and you know why? 'Cause I mean it to be.
I mean, I can make a whole video essay on just the Ted and Robin dynamic and how much I hate it, or just a whole video essay on the other problematic elements of what I dislike about the show and the toxic myth of grand romantic gestures. But for now, we'll stick to this idea of turning a no into a yes. Because Ted is a nice guy, we can justify everything he does. But what about the guys who apply this to their own lives? Everybody also believes that they are a nice guy. Very few people conceive of themselves as villains intent on doing harm. The guys in the game all thought they were nice guys doing pickup artist things because that's what they had to do to get laid. But in real life, when women say they don't want to see you again, you should just leave them alone. Not keep pushing because deep down they actually do want you to keep pursuing them. It is such a toxic idea that you can turn a no into a yes because romantic media is constantly feeding this idea to both men and women. I remember being a teenager watching this show and being convinced that romance worked this way. That there was a combination of words you could say, some grand romantic gesture you could make that would win over any girl. That sheer effort and perseverance was enough to generate romantic attraction, even when there was none. But that's not how reality works. So guys and gals, if someone says they don't want you, believe them that they don't want you. Leave them alone. There may be some small set of people who do change their mind, but harassing and pressuring the majority of people who won't change their mind is just not appropriate behavior. This is also why the nice guy women don't want versus the toxic man women do want is an idea completely devoid from reality. Those distinctions are not how real people operate. Real people are not permanently nice guys or lifelong assholes. People can and do change. And instead, what you more often get is the nice guys doing asshole things. With Ted, this manifests in him and Barney often being indistinguishable in how they treat women. Sometimes Ted enables Barney's misogyny, as the rest of the gang do.
Which one of these girls looks the dumbest?
All right, kid. Let's check the scouting report. What about the heater?
Sometimes he's right there with Barney, making the plays and tricks to seduce women.
Dad, there's 2 college girls outside and they look easy.
And then sometimes he does pick up artist shit even without Barney being there at all. Like in this episode entitled The Naked Man. In this episode, Robin ends up on a date with a guy called Mitch. The date isn't going so well, but when Robin returns to the apartment, she finds Mitch there completely naked. This is his signature move called The Naked Man. Something he recommends as a last-ditch effort to salvage something out of a date when it's clear that it's not going too well. The logic is that when the woman leaves the room, you strip down naked and wait for her to return, and then she's so charmed by your confidence and bravado when she enters that she laughs and sleeps with you. Ted is amazed by the fact that this works on Robin and decides that he's going to try the naked man as well. He goes on a date with a woman who turns out to be quite unpleasant and with whom Ted can see no future. So he pulls the naked man on her, waiting till she leaves the room and then getting naked to surprise her when she returns. Of course it works, and she's down to have sex. Now in the interest of being clear, this is deranged behavior. Yes, it's taking place in a sitcom, so we have to take it all with a pinch of salt and give allowance for some level of absurdity taking place that isn't meant to be taken at face value. But what's problematic isn't this one incident in isolation, it's how this one incident typifies the show's attitude towards Ted's behavior in particular. it's a systematic pattern. In this very episode, the writers demonstrate that they do know on some level how weird this is, because independently, Barney also tries the naked man on a different woman, but ends up getting unceremoniously kicked out at the threat of having the police called on him. So once again, we have the idea that if it's Ted doing the same problematic behavior, it's okay because he's a nice guy. But stripping down naked in someone's apartment when they leave the room, even though they've not shown any desire to be with you in that way, is just weird and creepy and threatening. In fact, remember that Mitch, the progenitor of the naked man, explicitly advocates to use this play when you think the date is going badly and there's no future in the relationship, which in reality is the absolute worst time to try and escalate things into sex. Now, if someone consents to a casual, no strings attached one-night stand, that is absolutely fine. But that's something that requires a conversation and context, not just impromptu ambushing a woman with your naked body. So to hopefully put the final nail into this point, this is not nice guy behavior. This isn't even the behavior of a cool pickup artist. It's just the behavior of a creepy loser. And there's no better evidence for this than the pickup artists themselves. Now there's an argument, and the pickup artists would definitely push this narrative, that you may not like these tactics, but the fact that they work is evidence that they are necessary. That guys are only doing what they have to do to succeed in the messed up world of dating. But when you read the game with an actual critical eye, you realize that their successes all come with huge asterisks. First, there's just a sense throughout the book where you can't help but question the reliability of the narrators telling the stories of their conquests. So many times in the book, you'll hear a story of either Stahl himself talking about a girl he picked up, or him giving us the story of another pickup artist, whether secondhand or from a direct forum post, and you can't help but think, yeah, this wasn't the success story you're making it out to be. One great example comes from the post of that guy Zan again, the 40-year-old guy who advocates being cocky funny and says he ignores when women are telling him no. When you read his account of a pickup attempt, you can see immediately how weird and creepy the interactions are, and how much he deludes himself into thinking he's getting somewhere when he's not. In this scene that he posts on the forum, he's describing how he wants to pick up this hot waitress, and you can just feel the secondhand cringe of this whole thing. Her, what can I get for you? Zan, hello, I haven't seen you around before. What's your name? My name is Stephanie, what's yours? I'm Zan, and I will have a gin and tonic. Big smile. So far, I've broken the ice a bit, and by exchanging names, she's given me the implicit right to be more familiar with her. So the next time she comes around, I smile and wink again. You again? Wow, you sure like to hang around us, don't you? Her laughs, brackets some stuff. Zan, some other stuff. Her, some other stuff. Zan, as she's leaving, I bet you'll come back again real soon. I can see it in your eyes. Her smiling, yeah, I can't resist. Even from just the beginning here, you can see clearly that this woman is just trying to do her job and tend to this table. You know, like a waitress is supposed to do. And Zan, who is so deluded by his own self-conception as a desirable ladies' man, just think everything she says is somehow an invitation to keep harassing her. Much like the incident with Ted and Natalie, I think if you only accept things from the point of view of the man telling the story, you might believe the framing they give it, that it's all good and wanted by the woman. And yet when you read it from a neutral perspective, it's so obvious that this woman just wants you to leave her alone. He's telling himself that her giving her name is implicit right to be more familiar. And it's like, no dude, you just asked for her name and you're the customer, so she gave you her name. This is just normal human politeness. Please stop bothering this poor girl. Later on, she comes to check on the table, again as her job is required to do, and Zan just keeps hitting on her. When she asks if they want another drink, he ignores the question and tells her she's cute and he's gonna call her. She tells him that she has a boyfriend and doesn't want to give him her number, but he just frames it as part of the whole game of it all. Then if that wasn't bad enough, he comes back on another day and this is how she greets him. Oh no, not you again. Now of course, in Zan's conception, he sees it all as part of his successful seduction. But again, it's like, dude, you walked in and she said, not you again. Please just give it up. But he tries to hit on her some more, fails to get her number, and then concludes with this in his forum post. The truth is, she may very well reject my overtures, but it doesn't matter. She won't soon forget me, and you can bet that the other waitresses all know about the things I said to her. And that is very good, especially since I have said almost the exact same things in the exact same way to all the other waitresses there, and I will continue to do so right in front of Stephanie. And it's like, yeah dude, she won't soon forget the guy who will just harass her and every waitress in here because they're all talking in the break room about what a goddamn creep you are. So that's one aspect of all of this, that these guys think they're being charming, but what they're doing more often than not is harassing women. And they'll claim that if they got a woman's number, it was a success, that they picked her up. But anyone who knows how the real world works knows that a woman giving you her number does not mean she's necessarily gonna sleep with you. It might mean that she's charmed and interested in you, but it might also mean I was drunk and I gave it to him in the heat of the moment, but in the sober light of day, I don't want to meet that guy. Or it can mean I gave him my number so that he would leave me alone and not follow me home. Or it can even mean I gave him a fake number and bailed. There's a whole spectrum of possibilities, and getting a girl's number is much like a match on a dating app today. It doesn't mean you scored someone who is irresistibly charmed by you. If you've been on Tinder or Hinge, you know the majority of matches just fade out into nothing because even when someone has expressed some level of interest in you, it doesn't mean they're gonna run all the way with that and sleep with you. But the other aspect of all the picking up that goes on in the game is just the fact that the vast majority of the pickups are being done in nightclubs where people are drunk and the women are usually very young, late teens and early 20s. The book never actually addresses the issue of alcohol and consent, except for this bleak passage where Strauss says, "Alcohol has never caused anyone to do something which they didn't want to. It only enables them to do what they've always wanted but repressed." Which just sounds like classic, if something is happening while she's drunk, she wants it to happen, nonsense justification. And so reading this book, you realize that a large amount of it is just targeting vulnerable women. Something that was a theme in some of those How I Met Your Mother clips I've shown with Barney asking Ted about picking up the dumbest girl or chasing easy college girls. But a good illustration of this comes in what Strauss describes as one of his more serious relationships in the game. This is about halfway through the book when he meets a girl named Caroline. As usual, he meets her at a nightclub while picking up girls with mystery, thinks she's a blonde hottie he wants to seduce, and then uses the tactics on her. They all go out for a meal, then back to one of their apartments where Caroline and Style fool around. But this is when you're told that Caroline is 19. Strauss is somewhere in his 30s at this point, and this is how he describes her. She was 19, she said, and hadn't had sex in almost 2 years. The reason? She had a 1-year-old child at home in the suburbs. It was, I realized, the first time I'd made a real emotional connection with a woman since I'd started picking them up. So Strauss's awesome pickup is a 19-year-old girl who hasn't had sex since she was 17, and the reason for that is because she's been stuck at home, living with her mother, sister, and brother while taking care of her 1-year-old child. Good job, Neil. You truly are the master. If that alone wasn't bad enough, the red flags of the relationship continue. After they have sex for the first time, here's what happens. As we lay together afterward, Caroline rolled away from me. She stared at the wall and grew distant. I knew what she was thinking. When I asked her about it, she burst into tears. "I gave it up too fast," she sobbed. "Now I'm never gonna see you again." Now you can say that these are two consenting adults, and that is valid. They are. There's nothing inherently wrong in their hooking up. But when you look at what's actually happening, you realize how creepy and predatory all of it is. This is clearly a girl who's not in a good place in her life, and her response to sex with Style tells you that she's not after just a hookup, she's desperately seeking love and approval. In this case, she probably sees an older guy who seems like he has his shit together and wants him to stick around, and so she had clearly intended to withhold sex from him as a means of keeping him interested, knowing that once she gave it up, he'd leave having gotten what he wanted. Styles' response to this is just to use 3 different lines he'd been taught by different pickup artist gurus, and while he says he did genuinely like Caroline, he admits that the whole thing falls apart fairly quickly. Again, this guy is so devoid from reality that even when he's having a real, profound interaction with another person, all he can think of is to throw generic lines at her. The problem with the pickup guru tactics isn't that they never work, it's that they only tend to work on people who are vulnerable. Either they're young and naive, or they're drunk, or they're in a low point in their lives where being negged would make them crumble and desperate to please the person who negged them, or a combination of all of them. And for the pickup artists, they're equally left unfulfilled by the whole encounter. We've already mentioned how Style talks about the fact that he'd stopped seeing women as individuals and just as conquests to judge his skills, but he also starts disconnecting from himself and others around him. I think the passage that really encapsulated it all for me is this one. It's a post from another pickup artist called Thundercat, and the topic is him discussing who the best pickup artist is out there. This comes towards the end of the book, and this is what he writes. Style is definitely, hands down, the best operating in the game today. This guy is probably the most evil, sneaky, manipulative bastard I have ever seen in operation. The thing is, this guy comes in totally under the radar, and that is why he's so dangerous. His subtlety is so amazing that before you know it, you're qualifying yourself to him and he has you right where he wants you. And the thing is, he does it with both girls and guys. No one is safe. To give you an idea of how incredible Style is, he's invented most of the techniques a lot of the top guys are using and teaching. He's practically Machiavellian in nature and is someone I both admire and fear. Add to this the fact that he's a rather average looking guy, and you have the most powerful of the Jedi, bar none. The thing about this passage is that Style clearly thinks it makes him sound cool because he included it in his book as a testament to the fact that he was now the best pickup artist in the community. But I did warn you before that there were these bizarre moments in the game when you think he might develop some self-awareness, only for Neil Strauss to just skate right on by. This is so dark. This Thundercat is saying that Style is evil and a dangerous figure who not only manipulates women but other men too. He seems like a nice guy but is actually a threat, returning to that idea we've been talking about all video long. He calls him a Machiavellian figure, which is another way of describing someone as cunning and manipulative and maybe even sociopathic. And yet all Style really gets from this is that it makes him a good pickup artist, therefore it's great. The sad thing about all of this is that what these guys need is emotional fulfillment in their lives. It's honestly one of the biggest problems with our society is that men lack the ability to express and share their emotions with other people, something human beings just need to do on a primal level. Honest male expression of emotion is so often mocked or shut down by society, and especially in media like the ones we've seen here, where a man crying, for example, is used as a source of humor. Traditionally, you should be able to express your emotions with, for example, your partner, who should be like your best friend. And yet for these guys, women are literal objects, things they rate out of 10 and then use to measure their own skills as pickup artists, before discarding unceremoniously. And then even with other men, they cannot form emotional connections. Approaching the world in this gamified way means that even other men become threats and tools to manipulate or be wary of. That's why the book is called The Game, by the way. I probably should have mentioned this a lot sooner than an hour plus into the video. In that first class way back at the start of the book, Mystery teaches Style that he should treat the art of seduction like a video game, viewing each attempt to pick up a woman only as a fictional puzzle to solve, like you would a level in a video game. This way of seeing things just detaches you so severely from the world that you cease to be able to form any meaningful connections at all. Neil Strauss found this out himself. Throughout the book, the major pickup artist gurus are all constantly warring with each other, desperate to prove that they are the best teachers with the best technique. Neil is initially taught by Mystery, but then goes to learn from Ross, the hypnotism guy, who demands that Neil should post publicly about how much better Ross is as a teacher than Mystery. Then when Style and Mystery both start teaching together, two of their pupils, Papa and Tyler Durden, start a rival business of their own, teaching workshops around the world. Eventually, they team up to rent a mansion in LA that they call Project Hollywood, but that whole thing collapses from the clashing of their egos and jealousy over women they like. The problem with these pickup artists is that they replicate the central error that caused them so much pain in the first place. They all began as awkward guys who felt bad about themselves because they weren't getting laid. They looked at what they thought were asshole alpha males with envy, thinking that being in their shoes would be a better life. So they set about to create the system of ways to get laid, not realizing that not only were they hurting women with their deceptive tactics, but that they weren't getting the fulfillment they were after either. Unsurprisingly, when you treat people as stats to pad your ego, you're never going to be happy. There will always be some greater milestone to pursue, some tougher challenge to win, and since you don't respect these people, you're obviously not going to find emotional connection with them. And yet, even though they're not happy, and none of these guys are, they keep pushing the narrative that all of this is great. Throughout the book, these guys go through several depressive episodes, existential crises, and Mystery in particular tries to commit suicide. At one point, he dumps a girl he's been dating more seriously, Patricia, because he demands that she have threesomes with him, and she refuses. This after he cajoles her into getting breast implants and becoming a stripper to please him, and while he's cheating on her constantly. After they break up, Mystery crumbles while Patricia thrives, and when he begs her to take him back, she refuses, causing Mystery to spiral and openly consider taking his own life. And yet throughout this whole period, he and Style are teaching other guys how to be pickup artists, selling the image of themselves as cool dudes who every man wants to be like. And the clips you've been seeing of Mystery and Style are mostly from this TV show that MTV gave to Mystery after the game was published. It's called The Pickup Artist, and it's a reality TV show about him teaching guys how to pick up women. Now, some people have defended this book on the grounds that it's just a documentation of the pickup artist world, not a glorification. But this guy writes for nearly 500 pages about all the various women he picks up or hit on, writes pages upon pages about the threesome he desperately wills into reality. And at one point, he has a passage where he claims a girl is having sex with him while he is writing. Not only that, after the book comes out, he starts a company called Style Life Academy, where he teaches guys how to pick up women like he did. This is a guy who knows how shitty and hollow the whole experience is, but wanted to sell it back to people anyways because it made him a quick buck. Now, years later, Strauss has released books and interviews talking about how bad all of that was and how the game is obviously cringe. He says that he's long since forsaken his old ways because they were self-destructive, and now he's much happier in a committed relationship with a wife and kid. But for the game, he continues to use the "I was just a journalist" defense. Dude, you started an academy where you taught people how to pick up women just like the best-selling author of the game. You released a follow-up book called The Rules of the Game, which comes with a 30-day program on how to pick up women. You made a fucking board game called Who's Got Game, the game with benefits. You sold the bullshit and cashed out. And that's why, viewers, we've been on this long but hopefully interesting journey. Because the BS is out there and has left a huge, dark, lasting impact on pop culture. Now the pickup artist trope is presented as a fun, harmless thing that nice guys can do in order to get laid. But at this point, the reasons should be pretty obvious when I say, this shit sucks, and it hurts everyone. What men need is to be able to open up to other men, to women, in both romantic and platonic contexts. So many of my closest friends are women, and if I walked around the world conceiving of them as only targets to judge my own pickup skills with, my life would be genuinely so much worse. So guys, if you're still here, please stop listening to these bald guys with bad facial hair. Wait, why does Andrew Tate look so much like Neil Strauss? Just pick up any book from Judith Butler or this really great one that I recommend by Irish author Emma O'Toole called Girls Will Be Girls, and realize that the world is a complex place. Women can be your friends, and you don't need to define yourself by your body count. Just be a nice guy, an actual nice guy, and that's all that should matter in life. The rest of the ups and downs, they will always come and go. But if you can look at yourself in the mirror and be secure that you're a kind and empathetic and safe person, then there's nobody who can break your peace and sell you this bullshit. And to women, well, sorry. I just hope that your shoes really are comfortable. Thank you for watching this video. If you've made it all the way to the end, then I am truly grateful for your time, and I hope you've enjoyed this long-ass video essay. I hope I've earned a like, a subscribe, or a comment from you, and again, if possible, I'd be so grateful if you would consider supporting this channel directly. The links to everything are in the video description, and you can come join the Soak Discord server where you can hang out with like-minded media lovers and discuss everything from books to games to movies and anime. You can also come watch my live stream on Twitch, where I'm usually playing some game or the other for a couple hours or so. Check out the other videos on this channel and see if there's any other topics you might enjoy. If you like this video essay, you may, for example, like some of my older works covering non-animated media, like this one I did on why we like crime-related stories, and this one on the history of witches in media. They didn't do too well in the algorithm, but I spent months of research on them, so I'm still very proud of how they came out. This was a very different style of video for me. I've never covered a book on this channel before, so if you'd like to see me do more of this kind of work, I'd love to hear it in the comments about what you'd want to see from me next. But that's it for now. I'll be back soon with another video, and until then, I hope you have a great day.